If you were to travel in time backwards 60 years and go to Couchiching Park here in Orillia, you would find a skinny kid jumping in and out of the water, collecting pop bottles from the tourists to change for penny candy, or maybe playing on the boxcars along the rail lines that used to be along the lake with his cousin Mike, or in the wintertime on the golf course up here on Lackley Street sledding down the hill. And if you were to tell this kid that his life would be transformed in ways that he couldn't even imagine, a wandering path through life with no plans, all surprise transformations that he didn't dream of in his wildest dreams, he wouldn't believe you. If you were to say, for example, do you know that one day your face will be hanging on a banner on Mississauga Street? Orillia Hall of Fame? Nah, he wouldn't believe that. If you were to say, do you know one day a professional Canadian astronomer is going to send you a message and say, I've just discovered a new asteroid out beyond the orbit of Mars. I get to name it, so I'm going to name it after you. And it's now official. There's an asteroid named Bob McDonald. Nah, not going to happen. If you were to tell him, do you know one day the Governor General of Canada is going to hang a medal around your neck, Canada's highest honor? Nah, not me. That's not going to happen. He wouldn't believe that. Because 60 years ago, this kid was led to believe that, well, he and his siblings, his two sisters and a brother, were not like other families. We couldn't afford to do what other kids did. We didn't live in poverty, but we were certainly the poor people on the block. So we couldn't do what other kids did. We were not as good. And this is largely because the father of the family, Clifford McDonald, handsome, well-dressed young man that he was, at least on Sundays, had a problem. And his problem was that he turned a good part of his income into alcohol. And that not only kept us poor, but it made the home a violent place, a place to be from, which is why the kid was spending so much time in Couchiching Park on the boxcars and on the hill in Lackley Street. And what a wonderful place to spend the first 10 years of life here in Orillia. An outdoor experience with the lake and the forests and being such a beautiful place to grow up in without having to go home. I didn't invite kids to my house to play because I never knew what I would find there. And that's why we never believed that we would really amount to anything. Because the legacy of coming from a violent home or a broken home, and I'm not trying to be melodramatic about this, is that feeling of not being good enough can lead you down a path where you will avoid opportunities that come along to you. You'll say, why should I bother? I'm not good enough. I wouldn't win at that. There's always going to be somebody better than me. And you'll avoid those opportunities. But the reason that this kid's life was transformed is because of people who did open doors of opportunity and did say, hey, why don't you try that? You'd be good at that. And gave him a little pat on the back, said, go ahead, you'd be good at that. And for some reason, he stepped through those doors and life was transformed. But the first major life-changing opportunity, the door that was open for me, came from a most unlikely source. It came from my girlfriend. We were both in our early 20s. I was working construction. She was still in university, Queen's University, so every weekend I was on my motorcycle driving the 401 to Kingston to go see her. But one summer, she got a job at the Ontario Science Centre. They hire students during the summer to host the public and to do the shows that they do. You know, stand hair up with static electricity, freeze flowers in liquid nitrogen. And she said, you know, when we go back to school, the Science Center is hiring people to do this full time. I can get you an application. You'd be good at that. I'll introduce you to the guy who's hiring. Okay. I drove my truck to the Science Center. And I met this guy. And fortunately, it was his first day back from summer vacation. And there was a big stack of application forms on his desk, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was right there. Now, my application didn't have anything in it anyway, and I don't think he'd even read it. But I met him, and I said, "Hi, I'm Bob McDonald, and I really like to work here. This is fabulous. This blends my love of theater and science. I've always been interested in science. I've always felt science was amazing at what it can do. I just wasn't good at doing it." But I liked what science does. I said, "This is great." And I just talked his ear off. I don't know how long. I talked at him, and I just told him how much I wanted to be there. And eventually, he just looked me right in the eye, and he said, "You're the kind of person we'd like to have here." And he hired me on the spot. All of a sudden, my life changed. I went from being a blue-collar construction worker to a guy standing up on a big stage wearing a white lab coat. I also grew a lot of hair. Come on, you've all got pictures like this in a drawer somewhere, right? It's the 1970s. Give me a break. Well, that began a whole series of opportunities that were open to me from the Science Center outwards, because it's a magical, magical place to work in. And I worked there for 6 years. And during that time, I met a person who opened 2 doors of opportunity beyond the Science Center for me. His name is John Lomberg, and John had 2 roles. One, he was producing radio documentaries for CBC, and the other, he was an artist. And John came to see one of my presentations at the Science Center, and he said, "How would you like to do a documentary at CBC, a radio documentary?" I said, "I've never done radio documentaries." He said, "I'll show you how to do it. We'll take the knowledge you have here at the Science Center, we'll turn it into a radio program." Okay. So I started working with him, and it was hard at first because I hadn't written for radio, and well, how do we do this? Well, we put the program together. By the way, do you know what the topic was in 1976? Climate change. Yeah, been at that a long time. Anyway, we put the program together, and it went to air. And the producer of the series said, "Hey, that was really great. Do you want to do your own series next year, 5 hours on like volcanoes and earthquakes and geology type stuff?" Okay. And all of a sudden, my career at CBC started. And I did 5 hours on geology. The following year, 5 hours on the oceans. Following year, 5 hours on microbiology. I wasn't qualified, but I was doing it. I was doing it, and they liked it. And as long as they liked it, I just kept on doing it. Now, the other thing that John did besides radio documentaries, and this is his main vocation, he's an artist, and his favorite topic are galaxies. And this is a galaxy that John drew. It's actually hanging on my wall at home now. This was used in a television series called Cosmos, which was done by the famous astronomer Carl Sagan. And this is another one that John drew that's now in the Smithsonian in Washington. So John and Carl Sagan had teamed up. And John illustrated all of Carl's books, and John was the chief artist for his series, Cosmos. But at that time, Carl and John were working on another project on a space mission out to the planets. The space mission was called Voyager, and during the 1970s, there was a grand alignment of planets. 4, the biggest planets in our solar system, were all on the same side of the sun: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And the Voyager mission was to do a big quadruple bank shot to all 4 of them. A 12-year mission that was going to go to all of these. There were 2 Voyagers. Both of them would go to Jupiter and Saturn, then Voyager 2 would go on to Uranus and Neptune. But after that, these planets are so big, they have so much gravity, they act like a slingshot. And they took Voyager and they literally just tossed it right out of our solar system. And these things will continue among the stars of our Milky Way galaxy for up to 1 billion years. 1 billion years. This doesn't happen very often. Almost everything else we send into space stays somewhere around the sun or a planet or the Earth. These things were going to leave. And Carl Sagan said, "Look, we've never built anything that lasts 1 billion years. The pyramids are only 5,000 years old. Humans have only been standing up on 2 legs for 6 million years. These things are going to last 1,000 million years out there in space. So maybe somewhere out there, there are aliens that might find them in the distant future. And if they do, why don't we tell them where it came from? It'll be space junk to them, or a UFO. however you want to look at it. So they had this idea, let's put a message on the side of the Voyager spacecraft. And because it was the 1970s, they put a record, long-playing record, with an hour and a half of music on it from all over the world. And digitization was just beginning to happen, so they digitized about 115 photographs on the record as well. John was on the team, a very small team that decided what the photographs were going to be, what the music would be, how do you represent Earth? And John designed the cover, a gold-plated cover, with instructions on how to play it and a little map of where the Earth is in the Milky Way. This was the project that John was involved in. And Voyager was going to be launched, and John said, why don't you come down to the launch? I'm going down with Carl Sagan. You can sit with us. So I got on my motorcycle, another one. I still drive motorcycles, by the way. And I drove to Cape Canaveral, and I sat with Carl Sagan and Frank Drake and John and all these people, the small team that had put this thing together. And we watched Voyager take off. It's just a missile. The intercontinental ballistic missiles that they use for the robots are really fast. Like they're like, whoa, look at that thing go. The space shuttles and the ones that have people in them, they come up fairly slowly because there's meat inside. You got to keep it alive, so you're going to go up slowly. But this thing was out of there. You could just see it's crawling its way off planet Earth. I got a long way to go. I'm out of here. By 6 o'clock that night, it was beyond the orbit of the moon. It took the Apollo astronauts 3 days to get to the moon. This thing was there in half a day, and it was gone. Wow, that's amazing. And as the rocket disappeared and the sound faded down, Carl Sagan turned to us, and he had tears in his eyes. And he said, we just sent a spaceship to the stars. And as all of us were in the van on the way back to the hotel, we were all really quiet. And we were thinking about this thing that we had just sent out that we will never, ever see again. All of us will be dead, and it'll still be there. Civilization could completely collapse. Humans could become extinct, and it'll still be out there. The continents of the Earth are going to change. They're going to shift around. The Earth itself will change, and they'll still be out there. We thought about this unfathomable length of time, deep time, that those things are going to be there. And then we thought about the dumb things that we argue about on this planet, where we draw a line in the sand and say, this is mine, that's yours, and don't cross that line. I'll fight you over it. I'll kill you over it if you cross that line. What stupid things we do here on this tiny little planet in this vast galaxy. That changed me. That changed the way I see our planet, the way I see the universe and our place in it. Now, I was also interested in where Voyager was going, because it was going to the planet Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And I kept going back for other missions. Here I am, one of the rovers that went to Mars. I was back for those. And most recently, there was one planet that Voyager could not go to, and that's the planet Pluto, because it wasn't in line with the other four. Voyager couldn't make the turn. So they had to send another spacecraft there. In 2015, we got to Pluto for the very first time, and I wanted to be there to complete my journey across the solar system. So to do that trip, I bought another motorcycle, and I bought this one particularly because of what it was. This motorcycle is called a Voyager. So I took Voyager to Pluto. And it was amazing. Again, we saw this amazing world that humanity has never seen. So what a journey. And it impressed upon me the power of science. That's what science does. Science is this incredible tool that allows us to see things that we can't see ourselves, to go places where humans have never gone before. And it's not just out into space. We can go inward into our own body. We can look at the trillion cells that make us up. We can go into our own DNA. We can go to the bottom of the ocean. We can look at the climate. We can look at the earth. We can look at life. We can see these things. Science is such a powerful tool that tries to help us figure out how the universe works. And there's still so much we don't know. Our ignorance still exceeds our grasp. So that was an incredible 2 doors of opportunity that John Lomberg gave me, one into radio and one into space. Out of that, when I would go to these missions, when I came back to Toronto, because there were very few Canadians there, the media would call up. And so the first time this happened, it was actually during a Mars mission, and the CBC called up and said, hey, anybody know a thing about Mars? And I said, yeah, I can you come on the news tonight? Yeah, sure. So I went on the news, and I brought some pictures. Hey, we landed on Mars. It's really neat. It's really great. And here's what we did. Here's why it's important. It's really fun. Yeah, great. They said, thank you very much. And then after they were in commercial and I was just taking off the microphone and getting off the set, the news director came down from the control room and stood right in front of me like this. And she said, you know, you're really good on camera. If you want to come back here and do science stuff for us, we'll have you, okay? You're really good on camera. It's very kind of you. Then she said, gotta go, bye. I was like, okay, that's neat. And then CTV called up, can you come on the morning show? Yeah, okay. Hey, you're good on camera. Do you want to come back and do science stuff for us? Okay. Global television. Hey, do you want to come back and do science? Okay. So suddenly I'm appearing on all these programs. I'm still doing it today. Still talk to Mansbridge and the National, whatever. Still happens. Hey, can you come on tonight and talk about, yeah, sure. So there, my television career took off. And at the same time, there was another surprise opportunity that came along that I really didn't expect. I was at one of these missions. I think it was a mission to Saturn. And the public relations person from NASA came up to me with a package and said, do you know we also sent a robot to Venus? I said, no, I didn't know. She said, yeah, nobody cares about Venus, but we've seen through the clouds of Venus. NASA sent a robot there with a radar that could penetrate the clouds, and they mapped the surface for the very first time. She said, yeah, here's the first maps of Venus. I went, this is historic. She said, yeah, I don't know, nobody cares. Here, okay. When I came back to Toronto, I figured this is such a big story. Somebody else is going to cover this, not little old me. And at that time, the Globe and Mail had a science page every Thursday. Funny how science used to be important. Anyway, that Thursday came around. I got a Globe and Mail, I opened it up, and it wasn't there. So I phoned the Globe and Mail, and I got a hold of the science editor, and I said, are you doing anything on Pioneer Venus? He said, what's that? I said, what's that? Are you crazy? I just came from NASA. We've seen through the cloud. I said, it's really important. You got to do this story. He said, so why don't you do it? What? He said, yeah, write it up and send it in. If I don't like your writing, I'll publish the pictures and give you credit. I'm really busy. Got to go. Bye. Okay. Now, I'd never written for newspapers, let alone the Globe and Mail, our national paper. But I did know someone who worked in print. So I called her up and I said, is there a formula for newspapers? Do they have like a structure that you write to? And she said, yeah, there's this thing called the inverted pyramid. And it's a structure that they use. So she explained that to me. Okay, so I started writing, radar reveals Venus, blah, 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 and I wrote out my story as best I could. And then I went to the Globe and Mail, and I met this guy. And I said, hi, I'm the guy with the Venus story. Here are the pictures. Here's why it's important, and here's my article. And he said, okay, thanks, I'll get back to you. Well, he didn't get back to me. And I thought, who am I to think I could write for the Globe and Mail? He hated it. He probably just tore it into little pieces and put it in front of a fan, I didn't hear from him. And the following Thursday, I went and I got myself a Globe and Mail, thinking, yeah, somebody else wrote it, or he just put the pictures in. And I opened it up, and there it is. There it is, by Robert McDonald. And get this. It is almost the entire page. The entire page. He published all of it. All of it. The Globe and Mail. Robert McDonald. Holy smokes. I called him back. I said, hey, thanks for publishing my article. And he said, you're welcome. Do you have any more? Yeah, sure. He said, great, send him in. I'll take him. He never said, who are you? He never said, where did you go to journalism school? What were your grades? I had an idea. And I realized that ideas are what sell. I came to him with an idea. So, sure, I'll give you ideas. I gave him other ideas. And all of a sudden, I'm writing for the Globe and Mail. I'm an author for the Globe and Mail, our national newspaper, just because I picked up the phone. Wow. What a transformation. And after 40 years of doing this, all these different things and trying to bring science to the public in different ways, finally, universities have started to reward me. And I've had 12 universities across Canada hang a hood over my neck and call me doctor. And it's a profound thing for me every time this happens. For a university to give me their highest honor when I failed university and I never got a degree. And I've discovered a few things about this in my journey, my complicated, unplanned journey through life. First of all, I've found out that, well, I'm nobody special. I'm not. I'm nobody special. We all get opportunities. People will say to you, hey, have you heard about such and such? You should try that. You'd be good at it. We all have that happen to us. And it's so easy to say, oh, no, I'm not qualified. I can't do that. I'm not good enough for that. Or I don't know. There's a million reasons why not to do something. And I have found 3 things that work. 1, say yes. Just say yes and see what happens. Even though you're not qualified for it, just say yes. You'll be amazed where it'll take you. And once you say yes, number 2, you're going to get really scared. You're going to get scared because it's new and you haven't done this before and you're going to go, what have I done? Oh, I can't do this. But rather than let the fear stop you, ask for help. Ask for help. Say, how do I do it? When I was faced with the newspaper, I called the journalist. How do you do this? And she told me. When I was faced with a radio documentary, how do I do it? John showed me. I want to produce television. How do I do this? A cameraman showed me. And how to edit. Ask for help. And 3, and this is the most important part of this process, finish it. Finish what you start. It's so easy to give up when it gets hard. It's so easy to give up. But if you do that, you will find yourself in a downward spiral of failure where you didn't finish it. And then the next time something comes along, you won't finish that, and then you'll stop trying because you think, I can't do that. I'm not good enough. Just finish it. You're not going to be the best in the world. There's always someone better than you. So what? At least you got it done. And the people you work for really appreciate that. When you get it done, just get it done. So, if you know someone whose dreams seem to exceed their reach, if you can open a door of opportunity for them, do it. Give them a pat on the back. And if you are that person and you see an opportunity before you, take it. And don't ever, ever let anyone tell you you're not good enough. Don't let them say that to you, because you never know where it's going to take you. And if an underprivileged kid from Orillia can do it, so can you. Thank you very much. Thank you.